from North Carolina. My dog Blue is deciding to bark in the background, so sorry about that. I think he sees the UPS truck or something. Again, we're going to be talking about your long-term research project that you're going to be doing with your teachers. And then with the parent docents, you're going to do 6 other lessons. All right, so about the importance of water. So you guys may know that water, the chemical sign is the H2O, and that's written with the 2 little kind of ears, like little bear ears that can wiggle around. And that's part of what makes water so magical and so diverse. And then the oxygen is the main like part of face of the bear, but it's this neat arrangement, these molecules that allow water to attract and also break down other materials. All right. Now, universal solvent. Have you ever heard that about water being a universal solvent? That's because it can break down other things. When the water's flowing through our rivers and our creeks, it's flowing over those rocks, minerals, sands. The whole time it's breaking some of those bonds of those rocks. Those minerals are then incorporating into the water. It's pretty cool. So they have these strong bonds, and they're able to break out the weaker bonds of other materials. Now, here on Earth, what's so unique about water is that we have it in the 3 states of matter. We have it in a solid, a liquid, and a gas. Now, if you look at this as an animation of a water molecule, again, the blue part that you see, the round big bottom, that's the oxygen molecule. The 2 smaller greens are the hydrogen. Now that line that you see coming on is that strong hydrogen bond. Again, that's what makes water so unique, that it's able to bind to other materials. Now, again, that strong bond, you may have already played with some things like ionic and covalent bonds, same thing, okay? So if you ever notice, like if you mix Kool-Aid mix in some water, then that kind of breaks down. But what happens if you mix sand into water? It doesn't necessarily break down, right? All right, so that's again, back to the structure of that water molecule. All right, so water as a liquid. Here you're looking at all these molecules kind of close together, but when you take these water molecules, because of the way they're bonding together, it allows our water to flow. So we get rivers and ponds and oceans. And these water molecules kind of take the shape of whatever container we put it in, okay? We put it in a square one, a round one, it's going to take that shape. And then it also is easily moved with pressure. So if you've ever spilled like water on a table, you know, you can kind of scooch it out, and that water, you can then collect it up or use a sponge, and that's the pressure we're talking about, how it'll move some. And it has a definite volume. Again, you can't really compress it down anymore because it still has its volume and takes up space. So again, it doesn't have a fixed shape though. So again, the water that we have, we can find it mid-range temperatures all over our planet. Now, when water freezes, something a little different happens. You see how these molecules are then close together. They're like in a certain form. So they have a definite shape, and it retains its density. Okay, now one thing that happens with our water when it freezes, say, into ice, you see how those molecules are all kind of packed in? But it actually makes kind of a bigger structure. So there's little extras air and all in there. So when you have a liquid, it's really tighter together. So that's why our ice floats. But that is very different from most other liquids and all when they freeze. Now, when water is in the gas form, that's when we're talking about steam, clouds. Look at these water molecules. For the place, they have a lot of energy. They're all spread out. So again, looking at how those molecules combine gives us our 3 different states of matter here on planet Earth. Okay, now we're going to be talking about how our water gets polluted, and you're going to be doing a couple labs with your docents, and you're going to be looking at the water in your long term, and you're even going to go on a field trip to Thule Ponds at Tyson's Lagoon. So thinking about how this water gets polluted, remember earlier I said that water is a universal solvent, how it can break other bonds down. So there we just showed a little bit of like salt, putting table salt, which is NaCl, just putting some table salt in the water. What do you think is going to happen to that salt? So we've got all our water molecules on the outside. You see the red and the little gray. But then what's happening to those NaCl, to those salt molecules. You see how they're starting to be attracted to those other water molecules. And now they can kind of hold hands and kind of hide between all of those water molecules. So that's pretty cool. That's what I was talking about, how it can dissolve, that it's a universal solvent. All right, so you're going to be learning all about chemical pollution. Now, chemical pollution goes back to this periodic table that you see here. Now, this table, unfortunately, when I went to school, we had to memorize this, but that's not the way it was ever designed to be used. This is for information. And once you know how to find information, you can make really cool answers and all. So remember I mentioned the NaCl. See if you can find Na. See if you can find Na. As you look through the chart, sodium. Na is sodium. Do you guys find it? Number 11. See if you can find number 11, sodium. And then look for the Cl, the chlorine. Cl, chlorine. 17. You see the 17? It's over in the green. Okay, so those two elements combine to make our table salt that we use every day. So if you notice how one, the Na is on the far left, the Cl is on the far right. They're kind of on opposite sides, just like a magnet, opposites attract. So that's how a lot of our combinations of elements get together. Now we're going to be using these periodic table to identify a lot of our pollution that we get at Tule Ponds and all around our local community. Now we're going to be looking at, again, the chemical, the physical pollution that we have. Physical pollution is anything that's on the ground. Once it rains, it's going to end up in our stormwater. So if you think about all the things that you see around, during COVID, we saw a lot of masks, the face masks. We get a lot of dog dew in the little bags because people are supposed to take them with them. We get a lot of like plastics, some of the plastic water bottles in our sediment. If there's a lot of dirt or somebody's cleaned their yard, all that gets washed down into the stormwater. Things like cigarette butts, anything that is in the road, on the sidewalks, when it rains, that's going to be pushed down into our water source. Now, these chemical sources, you're going to do an activity with the docents looking at these chemical parts too. Gasoline, if you look at the first thing, this is telling you some of the elements that are in gasoline. You see the CD has a mark for it. So let's look on this periodic table. Can you find CD? Where is CD? No, I can't even find it. It should be on here somewhere. So again, this is 48. Here it is. It's number 48. So that's cadmium. So again, we're going to be looking at how these heavy metals, these chemicals, end up in our water supply. Is that a good thing? Absolutely not. We don't want these in our water supply. But if we look at our water supply, we get all of our water from our local watershed. If you look at this picture, you can see that water, when it rains up at the top towards the mountains, it's raining. Headwaters. So all those waters start collecting across in the lowest point of gravity, and it's going to be dragged down then by the gravity is going to keep pushing it further down the hill. So we have our small little creeks, our tributaries. Then it gathers in through the wetlands that you see right there. Wetlands are like a sponge. They're very important. Unfortunately, most of our wetlands have been destroyed. Now, as the water keeps on going, it goes through the floodplains, eventually down to then the ocean. Now, if you look at something else that we've got on here, we've got a water table and groundwater. Now, last year, luckily, we got a lot of rain, and that kind of filled up our groundwater and our water table, which is great because now we do have actual water. Before, if you would kind of drill down trying to find your groundwater, it was gone. We had destroyed our water table. All right, so again, clean water. The whole time that that water's traveling through our watershed, it's going to be picking up different minerals from all the rocks and the soils that it's going over. It has the opportunity to pick up other pollutions, right? And again, everything that is on the streets and the roads is going to come down through our water system. Now, How do we clean it? How can we possibly fix all this? Well, different ways. The natural way is to use the biology and the geology. And we'll go through some of that. You're going to be doing that with one of the docent labs as well. We're going to be looking at artificial ways that we can clean our water. Luckily, we do that using chemical distillation because that's how you get your drinking water clean. When you turn on your faucet at the sink, you get that nice clean water. That has been artificially cleaned. Now, at Thule Ponds at Tyson's Lagoon, we have something called bioremediation. Remember those wetlands I talked about that were so important? So the bioremediation, that happens with the Thule plant. The Thule is a Thule rush. It's a long, tall plant. Roots are usually in the water. And that has a unique property. And in your long-term project, you're going to be doing a study where you have some Thule plants in your water, and you're going to be testing that water to see if the Thules actually help clean that water. Okay, we'll be able to tell from all the data that you're going to collect. All right, so back to our water qualities. This is just a quick background to remind you of some of these properties of water. Now, if you look at these objects that are floating on the top left, these objects are showing you surface tension. Now, you see this water spider, he's going to be floating there. Look how his feet don't break the surface. The water actually kind of molds around him. So if you look at these water molecules at this bottom picture, that's showing you how those water molecules, again, have that strong hydrogen bond. And it's kind of like they're all holding hands to be able to keep that spider up. Now, if you have objects that you drop onto water, and you can do these kind of things at home too, with just a cup of water, a bowl of water. If you drop in a paper clip, if you drop it down, like straight down, it's going to go straight to the bottom, right? But if you try to lay it down very carefully, maybe with like a piece of toilet paper underneath, so that the toilet paper just floats and it goes away, it's going to leave your paper clip floating. The reason it does that is because of surface tension. And even on the far right, if you look at that drop of water, and you see this diagram kind of showing you how these molecules are all holding hands and holding on, gives us that shape of that drop. All right, Dr. Joyce is going to tell us a little bit about surface tension at the sink. And again, this is something that you can do when you go home today.
Let's look at a drop of water. If you notice as it comes down, it's no longer a stream, it's free falling, and gravity and surface tension makes it into like a little ball, like a drip. Now as you go down, you'll notice that not all of it goes in the water, but let's look at how they form, and as they get large enough, the surface tension is broken, and then it flows out.
Now, this it's something, again, you can do at school or at home. If you look at the stainless steel sink, you look around how some of them are more rounded than others. Some of them kind of bubble up. You may have also done the experiment where you try to put drops of water onto a penny and it bubbles up. Or maybe you've tried to fill your cup up and it gets so full that it bubbles over at the top, but it's able to hold on with those strong hydrogen bonds for a while before the molecules can break out. So again, these are fun examples. Surface tension. All right, now gravity is always at play when it comes to water. Again, that's how the water gets down through our watersheds. I want you to notice the pattern as it flows through this little creek. And this is a creek here at Thule Ponds. And if you look kind of in the middle, it's kind of going slow at first, but then it speeds up as it goes around the curve. All right, here we go. Now, can you tell from that flow where it's fast moving and slow moving? Now, as it goes around the bend of this last corner, you'll see that one side where the water's fast moving, it digs out that part of the stream bed. The other side is nice sloping and more dirt is being deposited there because of the slower flow. So our flow of water is also very important. The materials that it flows over also plays a role. I'm just going to play this little bit here. It shows you about just how the water is moving. Again, Water here on planet Earth, since it can take the three forms, it has one of the weirdest compounds that we have here on planet Earth when we compare it to other materials. Now look at the end of this video where it stopped. See this little, let's see, if it's gonna right here, this little part, what's gonna happen to that water there? A couple things. It could seep down into our groundwater. It could evaporate with the sunlight, and then it would be the gas that's stuck in our air. So again, water as it flows through is going to take on different qualities. Now, when it comes to this cleaning water, remember there are a couple different ways we can clean it. If we look at this picture here in the middle, this is a picture of Tule Ponds at Tyson's Lagoon. Some of you may have been there for a field trip before. If not, it is right next to the Fremont BART station. If you're looking at the Fremont BART station, it's the trees and all, it's fenced off right next to it off of Walnut Avenue. So this body of water is Tyson's Lagoon. This is also where the Hayward Fault runs through. And so that's also where some of the water is provided. But then these little smaller ponds over here, these are man-made ponds to help control the storm water. When it rains, because there's houses all around us, the rain can't soak through our pavement and concrete. So it has to go somewhere so it doesn't flood the local neighborhoods. So the water floods into these three ponds. And then when it overflows, it's going to go out into our seasonal wetlands and then further out into the bay at Mowry Slough. Now, again, your drinking water that comes out of your faucet, that has also been treated, so it is clean. Okay, sometimes we put extra minerals and elements back into it, like fluoride, depending on what's needed for the water in the local area. In North Carolina, here we have a lot of well water. So we have to dig a well, and then we're taking water from the aquifers that are underneath in the water table. And a lot of our wells have high minerals. And so like if you leave the drips on the sink, it's funny colors because it's depositing some of those minerals. So anyway, water tastes different all around. And then you have your toilet with our little emoji, your poop water, the sewage. Have you ever wondered where all that goes? Like when you flush, where does that water go? When you're brushing your teeth and water's going down the drain, where does that water go? When it rains, where does that water go? So that's, again, part of the things we're going to be looking at. Now, this is a picture, again, of our watershed areas and kind of how it is treated. Obviously, the big gray things with the school buses and the cars, those are your roads. Let's see if you can figure out where everything is. The lower part here with the sailboats, you see that? Of course, that's the San Francisco Bay. Because again, we're going from high to low. So if you look up here, we've got the high hills. So coming down around Niles Canyon, Alameda Creek, look at this large part here. So this part up here is very natural creek. As we get further down here, we have concrete, some of that pathway, again, to prevent flooding. All right, so as we go through, we see some of our active waterways. You will also see these kind of tannish. These are our sewage, or sewage where the flush the toilet, that's where the water goes. And then we've also got our pipes underneath that carry our storm water. So this light blue pipe here is one of those that would carry storm water. So as we're looking at this map, we have three big areas. So we've got the Alameda Creek. Over here, we've got Laguna Creek. And right in the middle is where we have Tule Ponds up there at the top by the yellow with the school bus, that big body of water. And it flows, if you watch the stormwater drain, it flows under the cities of Fremont and Newark and out to Mowry Slough in the Bay Area. Now we want that stormwater to be cleaned before it gets out into the bay. One reason is because this area at Mowry Slough is a pupping area for the harbor seals. Seals out there. So of course we don't want our pollution going all the way out there. All right, so here's a quick little video of Tule Ponds at Tyson's Lagoon. So again, this is the big part that always has water. Again, Hayward Fault runs through it. If you look right along the shoreline, though, of this pond, in the far distance, you'll see the plants that are tules. The other plants you see here right between these two trees, these are called cattails. Now, both of these, long, long ago, would have been a kind of food source for our Mwekma Ohlonies, and they would have used them for clothes, like a grocery store, all kinds of things. Now we need them because both of these have a part of cleaning the water. Remember all the chemicals that are coming off of our roads when it rains? All going to end up in here. If we don't have some way to clean it, then all these heavy metals are going to end up with our organisms and our water source. All right. So when you go to Tule ponds, it's a day, I think you're doing it not till later, till like springtime. But when you go, make sure you wear comfortable shoes because you're going to be hiking all around. And we have a certain different kinds of habitats that we have there. Back at number 1, there's a small creek. Anytime that you have an area that's near water, it's called a riparian area. So this creek is going to have some fast flowing water. Then we have the big part of Tyson's Lagoon and these ponds, number 4 and number 3. So those are going to be larger bodies of water. Tyson's is always going to have water. These smaller ponds may or may not, depending on how the summer goes. And then we've got areas like number 2. This is a big open meadow. This is actually a seasonal wetland. Now, right now, it's all dry and it's got plants growing in it. But in the middle of our rainy season, in the middle of winter, that area could be flooded. And again, head out to Mowry Slough. So we've got lots of different areas of sun. We've got where the trees have grown over and made like a canopy. And again, all different types of water. Now, why is Tule ponds important to organisms?
Tyson's Lagoon is an important area to maintain the habitat that have come here for millennium. It provides nutrients, food, and a place to stay protected while they're on their journey from the north to the south, and then the south to the north back.
So we get a lot of migratory animals, lots of birds. Lots of birds in the area, like during the day, a lot of the water birds will be out on the bay, but they come in here to Tule ponds at night because it's a nice protected area. They can get settled. So again, variety of plants that are there. That means we have a greater diversity, greater variety of animals that are there. All right, so here's again a flyover. We're going to kind of do a drone over these Tule ponds. So of course we have fish and other aquatic organisms down in the water. Can't see those though with the drone. I think we are coming up on a seagull, some kind of a duck maybe. But again, you see right along the water's edge, these long tules. Then we have willows, and then we have some larger trees like our oak. So again, all this works together. Oh, you just saw some fish jumping. So turtles, frogs, all kinds of environments, as long as we can keep that water healthy. Now, how do scientists know if it's going to be healthy or not? This is where that scientific testing comes in. Now, as rain, again, as it falls down rain on the streets and all, it's going to move all of our pollutants through the watershed. So this right here is some pipes that are coming in off of Walnut Avenue, almost towards the BART station. And as you see, what's happening with this white stuff? Some soap that was illegally dumped. Let's listen to Dr. Bluford.
Rain brings pollutants into the area. Here, the soap represents an accumulation of phosphates in the roadways, and when the water comes, it clears the roadways, but brings it to our habitat. Is that good for our organisms? No.
All right. So again, when you go home, as you're walking around later, notice all of the storm drains, even in your neighborhood and around your school. So what happened here is somebody pulled up next to one of those storm drains and they dumped all that soap. Maybe it was like a pressure washing company. Anyway, they didn't want to pay the fees to get it dumped the right way. So they illegally dumped it here. And again, that can cause problems for all our organisms. Now, these big pipes are in our seasonal wetland. And again, it works by gravity, just like water coming down the mountains and flowing. It still has to be on the right angle so that the water can get all the way out then to Maury Slough. So underneath our city, we've got the roadways on top, but underneath we have tons and tons of these pipes, layers and layers of these pipes that take water away so that areas won't be flooded. Now, these stormwater pipes, again, working on gravity. So during the winter, these pipes will have water flowing out.
These are the storm drains that when this area gets flooded, water will go out here, prevent flooding for the local community. Now these pipes go throughout the city of Fremont and Newark. And just to show you how nice echo.
Miles and miles and miles of stormwater pipes carry our stormwater. Now, again, that stormwater is not usually going to be filtered before it gets out to the ocean unless we do something called bioremediation. So this is stormwater bioremediation using these tule plants. So here you've got a picture of these tule plants, again, an aquatic, so their roots can be down in the water, one big long stalk. Those can be harvested later and even used for to make like a tule hut or even a tule boat, because they are waterproof on the outside. There are some small seeds, but they spread more through their roots or their rhizomes.
Now we're going to look at some of the tule roots. Tules are noted for its bioremediation. Within the roots, there is lots of fungi that are growing. So art's kind of pulling it out. You see the roots are pretty extensive. And so we're going to take a look at this root as he clears it away. And you can see the roots right there. And those roots have fungi in it that help chelate or take out heavy metals like copper and lead. Oh, and there's a little, is that a little worm there? Yep, little worm. Okay.
So just by having that little worm there, we know that the tules are doing their job, that they are remediating, cleaning that water. Again, those roots are able to chelate or take away and store those heavy metals so that's out of the water then. So this is a close picture of those tule roots. Now, in your long-term experiment, you're going to have several pots of these tule plants, like you saw Art bringing up, and they're going to be sitting down in the water, and we're going to see what happens to our polluted water if these roots are indeed able to get rid of those pollutants. Now, remember I mentioned chemical pollutants and physical pollutants. What do you see in this picture? Pretty gross, huh? Would you want to go swim in there? Oh, no. Absolutely not. So the physical trash, remember I talked about the plastics. And if you look at these, it's like kind of whatever was around. Like if you dropped a bunch of papers when you were getting out of a car and then they just blew down, you let them blow down the road, they're going to end up here at Tule Ponds. Now, what happens to these plastics is they all start to break up. They get smaller and smaller and smaller. What do our smaller organisms then end up eating? The plastics. So plastics breaking down to microplastics is a huge issue, and that is creating physical pollution that we need to be able to solve. So on the weekends, we do have a lot of high school kids that come and help us clean up some of this physical trash that we have around. But again, you see, it's all different kinds of things. Whatever would drop down on the sidewalks and all, it's going to end up getting washed down here. Now, just by looking at this picture, can you see if there is chemical pollution here? You can't tell. Okay, not just by looking at it. All right, so again, our willow trees are the ones that you see reaching down and over. Again, those are trees that like to have wet roots. Good thing since they're in the wetlands. Now, here's another illegal dumping. So you see these big storm drains. These are coming off of that Walnut Avenue side. These big storm drains, it kind of had this like a light kind of mocha shake or like a light coffee that was in this area. So we collected some of this material. And if you look at these two canisters, it took days and days for this to settle out. Now, what's going to happen to all our organisms that are trying to swim through that are trying to find food to eat through that. So that's how this pollution very quickly affects our smaller organisms. Because if our smaller organisms die out, then our bigger organisms don't have anything to eat either. All right, so again, this is another drain, illegal dumping. All they have to do is drop it down the storm drain. So that's why it's best to leave like car washing to the car washes, because they again have the bioremediation and chemical means of cleaning that water. Again, our storm drains is not filtered. It only comes through if it happens to have some bioremediation here. We've got a few tules that we then planted back in this area, and hopefully that'll help us in the future to rid our water of the sediment and the toxins. Uh-oh. So one morning we came in, and this is what we found: a huge fish kill. So something was dumped. We don't know. We still don't know what toxin it was, but something was dumped into the water supply that killed all of these fish. Now you can see there's one really big fish and some smaller fish. But again, through that whole food chain, if our tiniest things are lost, then our biggest ones don't have anything to eat either. So it affects the whole food chain. Now in 2018, we lost about half of the water volume that Tyson's Lagoon usually has. So if you look at this, there's kind of a little bit of more water to the right. You see the tules all along the edge. You see how the mud starts to crack. See how it makes that weird little pattern? The water coming up between those cracks, that's the water of the water table. Now, because we had a drought for so many years, our water table was destroyed. But luckily, again, we had so much rain last year and snow melt and all that's helped. So hopefully our water table is in better condition now. Now, if you look at this picture, this is a little dock that floats off of Tyson's Lagoon. On the lower left, we have a lot of blackberries. So you do have to kind of watch for some of the thorns. That's a plant we're trying to get rid of there. But if you look along the edge, you see those light green straight off from the pier. Those are the tules. Then we have different kinds of willow trees, and then larger oaks that are trees that are farther back. So again, we have lots of animals there because there is such a diversity and there is available water. I think Dr. Bluford has something to tell you.
The sun is coming out at Tyson's Lagoon. The tules are starting to grow tall. You can see them in the background. These later will be cut and made into a tule house.
And again, you will see that when you go on your field trip then to tule ponds at Tyson's Lagoon. All right, now back to your specific long-term experiment. Now, every grade level at Mattos is going to be doing a long-term experiment and then 6 smaller experiments with our parent docents. And all those parent docent lessons are going to give you more information for your long-term. So they kind of all go together. All right, so if you look at this tank, there are 2 small pots of the tule plant, and then we're going to fill it up with water, and you're going to be measuring the pH. So here is Dr. Bluford.
To set up your tanks for pH studies with tules, you will need to get 2 buckets of tules. They need to be anchored, and then you start slowly filling up the water. You'll then artificially put in acid or base, fill the water up to the top, and then over time see how tules help clean the water.
All right, so this is one thing that we still have to work out where our tanks are going to be. Teachers, I'll be in touch with you, and if you've got any suggestions for me, let me know. This year, we're kind of having to rearrange a lot of stuff. Materials have been moved around. I think in the past, you guys actually had tanks in your classroom, and now I think we're talking about putting these tanks in the docent room. So I will be in touch with you as far as where those tanks are going to be. But as we go through our experiment, you're going to have one tank that's the control that doesn't have anything else in it except for the tules and the water. The water can either be tule water like this. You see how it's got some algae and all in it, it's green. got little plants floating on the top that's called duckweed, or you can use clear water from your sinks. Okay, that's your choice. Your class can decide how they want to do it. So one tank is going to be your control. You're not adding anything to it. One tank, you're going to be adding something that's ammonia. And the ammonia will probably use in like a window cleaner. Not all window cleaners have ammonia. You don't ever want to use ammonia like on your car windows. That messes them up. All right. And then we're going to add in another tank, third tank, we're going to add a little bit of vinegar. Then we're going to start testing that pH and see what happens to it. Does it go up? Does it go down? Does it not change at all? And see what happens. See if our toolies can do anything about it. Now, I mentioned pH, and this is how you write that. You're going to be testing temperature. You're also going to be writing down temperature, but this pH, it's percent of hydrogen. Now, this scale, you see all these different colors. A lot of times things are written in these colors. If you've ever gone to the swimming pool and you saw some of the lifeguards testing the water, they may have been comparing, they put a little drop in there. They're comparing the color of the water with a chemical in it to this color on the side. So all these different colors. All right. So a couple things to notice. Let's see, water, it's 7. 7 is neutral. That's good for us. Okay. So let's see if you're going, let's see if you're swimming in the pool since it's still a little bit warm. If you're swimming in the water and you get out of the pool and your eyes are red and they're itchy, you know why your eyes are red and itchy? It's not the chlorine. Chlorine is what we use to put in the pool to help clean everything, keep it safe for us to swim in. But it's actually the pH. The pH is off. So when they put the chlorine in, that makes it go very alkaline. Go this way. So if your pH of your water is like an 11 or a 12, that's going to hurt your eyes. Okay, so it's not necessarily the chlorine, it's the pH. So if you look at some of these other things, though, like a battery, if you have a car battery, a motorcycle battery, something like that, or even a regular, little battery that you use at house, if they ever leak, that gets that battery acid out. That battery acid, because it is so basic or acidic, it can burn you. Now, on the other side, soap, a lot of the lyes and all that are used in soap are also way away from our comfort level of pH, and so those can burn us. You think about some of the foods that you eat. If you ever eat a lot of things with the tomatoes, like spaghetti sauce and all, sometimes you may end up with a bellyache, like it'll upset your stomach. You also see the stomach acid to break down our foods is way over here on the 1s and the 4s. Well, if that happens, then you end up taking the little stomach tablets, which are more of a 10, more alkaline. So see, it's like we can kind of balance things out. All right, if that makes any sense. So start noticing kind of how some of these things work. This is pH that you're going to be measuring. Now, how do you measure it? Some fancy scientific equipment. Those little water tabs where you're just comparing the colors, that's not detailed enough for us. We are going to use these little handheld computers. We're going to be looking again, if the toolies are already in the tank, we're going to have 3 different tanks. We're going to collect the data over time. We're going to do it one full experiment for probably about 8 weeks, and then we'll take a break and then do it again a second time to make sure that it's verified, that we can get the same results again. All right, so Monica, who works at Tuliponds, she's going to show you a little bit about this pH testing.
If you are testing pH straight from the tank, you want to set the stand proportional to the tank so that when you put your pH probe in there, it won't touch the bottom of the tank. You are then going to take your LabQuest and you're going to take your pH probe that's connected to it and you're going to suspend it over the stand. Take a look at how I'm suspending it and it's not touching the bottom. We don't want it to touch the bottom because they could break easily. Make sure the LabQuest is on the right screen and that's all you have to do to test for your pH.
All right, so you get the idea that those probes are made with glass. So we do have to be very careful with them. I think we do have 3 of the little computers that we can bring over. So it's as simple as going in, hitting the button, taking your temperature, and then getting your pH score, recording that down. And then I don't know how you guys want to do it, if you want to report back and have like a central table. Again, thinking back to where we want to put these tanks, again, it's the best, of course, to put them in your classrooms, but you guys may not have the space for that and to be able to get both classes to be able to share. Be thinking about the best location for that. All right, so this is a lab sheet that you will be recording. So even if, let's say, 3 of you go once a day to go get a measurement, so you may not go for a week or 2. Okay, but every child, every student needs to have their own lab sheet. And that's because everybody sees things a little different. And again, it gives us a place to put extra comments. So if you start to notice either the tulies are dying out, or there's some new plants, or there's some bugs, or everything's green, or it smells, whatever your comments can be, you can write those down. Again, you're recording the pH using those little computers. And again, temperature with just a simple thermometer. All right, so again, we're going to do it 3 different tanks, one with the ammonia, one with vinegar, and one as a control with nothing else added in. Now, once we have all this data at the end, then we can start creating some graphs. Because a lot of times when you look at this data in a graph, you see things like it jumps out at you, that you see these weird patterns that it starts to form. So again, we'll be doing different kinds of graphing at the very end. And we'll be doing this experiment twice until March. Then we'll have it all ended. So again, when you go to Tule Ponds at Tyson's Lagoon, you're going to be doing the same thing at actual Tule Ponds with the stormwater. You see all these different numbers. Those are places that you're going to go and collect water samples. You're going to come back into the classroom that we have there, use the same monitors to try to get, again, your pH. We're going to figure out if it's too acidic or too alkaline. And you're going to compare it to some work that some high school students did. So some high school students took the same water samples and they did their runnings too of the pH and temperature. We're going to see if yours are just as good as those high schoolers. See how those compare. Now, the last part is keeping our water clean. The very end of this, we're going to use all of our information to make an infomercial. And this was done by Mr. McLeod's class. And Mr. McLeod, this is fantastic. I thought it was so great. As you watch this little infomercial, the kids are talking about some of the things they've learned and some of their conclusions. All right, let's go with our infomercial from Mr. McLeod's class.
What is this? It looks polluted.
Yeah, this is from Tule Ponds. Isn't that true that Tule Ponds is polluted?
Yeah. How did this happen? The rain that goes into the storm drains sometimes gets polluted by chemicals and trash that people leave on the ground. Then it flows into Tule Ponds. What's a Tule?
These are Tule plants.
How do they help clean polluted water?
The Tules suck in chemical pollution and filter clean water out. That is why Tule plants are considered good plants to have in the pond.
So they're kind of like nature's water filter?
Yup, you got it.
Here are some helpful tips on pollution.
Please don't dump harmful chemicals anywhere because it might be swept away by water when it rains into the storm drain. Try to save water also. Take shorter showers and don't leave the water running.
Don't change your own oil or wash your own car because the soap or oil might flow into the storm drain.
There are 2 types of pollution, chemical and physical. Physical pollution is like trash.
Be safe, take care of water,
And don't pollute!
Pretty good, huh? Now, if you look at all these kids, Mr. McLeod, I'll have to ask you later. I imagine these kids now are maybe high school age. Some of you, if these were brothers or sisters, maybe you would recognize them. All right, that's pretty fun. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop my share.
By the way, they have graduated from high school and they're going to be freshmen in college this year.
Fantastic. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, I was really impressed with that. I thought they were great. They did a great job. So at the very end of this long-term experiment, you guys are going to do something similar. It doesn't have to be an infomercial. It could be a poster, just something that kind of brings to a conclusion all of the things that you've learned. You saw what your data shows you, that again, for your long-term that you're doing. And you're going to try to come up with some product, some kind of product that you can better educate other kids about. Now, again, fourth graders this year are doing a separate kind of biogeology project, but next year they're going to come up and do this same kind of project. So again, you might be able to leave a legacy that can be seen for a while. All right, so at this point, all I have is just if we have any questions.